Hello, my name is Eddie Jennings and I want to welcome you back to the channel. In this video I'm going to talk about Microsoft Open Value license agreements, and in particular how to wrap your head around the purchasing of licenses outside of the first year of the agreement. I can remember when I first encountered open license agreements, it was a little confusing, but once you think it through, it makes sense. So I hope this video might be helpful for you if this is some of your first time navigating Microsoft Open Value agreements for your small business. You'll encounter this a good bit in small businesses, as these license agreements are tailored kind of by Microsoft for the smaller businesses. I think the cap for Open Value licenses is like 250 licenses on it, so a lot of small businesses are not going to get anywhere near that particular number. So the way the Open Value not Open Value subscription, that's a different totally different thing, but the way just an Open Value license works is the cost of your licenses is split evenly over the course of 3 years. So let's say that the cost of a license for a something is $600. So, and you bought 5 of them to start your Open Value agreement, and so the cost of these licenses is $3,000. I do some math in my head there. 600 times 5, $3,000. The way the payments are going to work for those licenses is, for each license, you're going to be paying $200 every year, and you will also have software assurance. Software assurance is something that's always going to be there with Open Value agreements. The big advantage of software assurance, it will grant you rights to whatever the newest version of the thing is that you've purchased the license for, and there are some other benefits that go along with software assurance as well. I'm not going to dive into software assurance with this video. We're focusing just on the license agreement itself. But go back to our example. We have the 5 licenses. Every year we're going to be paying $1,000 plus software assurance for those licenses. And just for the sake of numbers, let's say that software assurance is $50 per license per year. And so every year you'll pay $1,000 for the licenses, then 50 times 5, so that's 250. So you'll be paying $1,250 every year for license and software assurance. You'll pay it, let's say we start in January 2019. January 2019, you'll pay that. January 2020, January 2021, you'll be paying the that same amount for those licenses. That's the way the agreement works. Now, let's say that in April you decide to buy another license of whatever this thing is that you have on your agreement. So what you're going to pay in April is going to be $200, because remember the total cost of a license is $600. This agreement divides it into 3 equal parts, and so it'll be $200 in April. We said that the cost of software assurance is $50, so that's $50. So in April, you're going to pay $250 as the first payment for that license. Then in January of 2020, because remember our agreement started in 2019, our agreement started in 2019, and every 3 years, so every year, January 2020, January 2021, we'll make a payment. So for this license that you just bought in April, you'll pay $250. And then when January 2020 rolls around, you're going to pay the next $250 for that license. And then in January of 2021, you're going to pay $250 for that license. And so what we did by buying license number 6, so to speak, in April, is we paid for year 1 of stuff in April, and then year 2 of stuff we'll pay in January, year 3 of stuff we'll pay in January. The thing to remember with the software assurance piece is that is not prorated. You will, even if you buy a license in December 31st, and you have 1 day of software assurance for that year, you will still pay $50. That's just the way it is. There is no prorating of the software assurance, nor is your license agreement extended. So just because you bought a license in April of 2019, that doesn't push the agreement to will be April of 2021 as the ending time for that. Ending time is still going to be not 2021, I guess it'll be April of 2022. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't change the timeline term for your open value agreement. It's still going to be January to December. So the question comes in is what happens when you buy something during year 2? So let's say that we go back to April again, and it's now April 2020. So we're in our second year of the volume license agreement. What do you pay? Well, if you remember, the original cost of the license is $600. So divided into 3 equal payments, that's $200 each. If you buy something during year 2 and you put that on this agreement, you cannot possibly split that payment into 3 parts because year 1's gone. We're now in year 2. And so generally the way what you're going to pay is calculated, and this can be a little confusing for folks because they'll see this look like it's more expensive even though it really isn't, is they'll take that total amount, $600, and divide that now into 2 equal payments. So it'll be $300. The software assurance is still $50 a year. So when you buy this other license in April of 2020, you are now paying $350 at April 2020 for that license. That's one year's worth of payment of 2 payments, because remember, year 1 is gone. We're now in year 2, and the software assurance for that year. Then in January, you're going to pay another $300 plus software assurance, because that is the beginning of the 3rd year of your agreement. And so for this license bought in April of year 2, that's the 2nd of 2 payments for that license. So on your invoice, you're going to see your other licenses, plus you have this other one that's probably going to be labeled something like 1 year acquired year 2, something like that. And you're going to notice that its cost is seemingly higher, but that's because the cost of the license is only split into 2 parts instead of being split into 3 parts that you would have with something that you bought during year 1 of your agreement. The one thing to note is that you will not pay software assurance for that first year. So if you that $50 software assurance, you're not going to pay an additional $50 for year 2019 for the license you bought April of 2020. That wouldn't make any sense because you can't get any benefit out of the software assurance for that first year. So let's say you buy yet another license, and you buy this on April of 2021. So if you remember, our original license agreement started in January 2019, so you'll be making 3 payments: January 2019, January 2020, January 2021. So at this point, we're now in April of 2021. All of your other licenses you have completely paid off. You paid the license and software assurance, some of which you paid software assurance for 3 years, one of which you paid software assurance for 2 years because you bought it during the 2nd year. You've paid the full license cost for all of it. So that's completely paid off. But before the end of the year, you realize you need to buy another license, and it happens to be April of 2021 when you buy this. So what you're going to pay April of 2021 is $600 for the license, because we're in the 3rd year. You can't go back in the previous 2 years and split the payment. So at this point, you will buy the entirety of the license, $600, plus a year of software assurance, because that software assurance is the way that agreement works is you're covered through the end of December with software assurance, so you still have to pay that. So the total for that license is going to be $650, which again might look kind of strange on the invoice. Hey, all these other things, this is payment of like $250. Why is it $650? Well, it's because you've bought this license during the 3rd year of your agreement rather than the 1st year of your agreement, and since we're in the 3rd year, you're paying all of it now. So the question might become, does it make sense to start a new agreement and be able to split now this new license over the course of 3 years? Well, that's a topic I'm going to cover in another video where you would have 2 agreements that you split up to kind of offset some of the costs. But for the scope of this video, I wanted to explain how purchasing in years outside of year 1 works with open value. The cost of the license does not change. It will always be, in this case, it will always be $600 for this agreement to buy a license. What changes is how the payments are split. If you buy it during year 1, payments are going to be split in terms of 3. So you will pay 1/3 of it 1/3 at the annual point for your agreement, and 1/3 at year 3 of your agreement. Something to keep in mind, let's say that you buy that license in December, so you'll pay year 1's license cost, and then immediately in January pay the second payment. And I'll get into that in the second video as far as how you can kind of maximize how you would work with that. But the key takeaway is license payment's always going to be the same. The question is, depending on what year you've bought the license, will that payment be split into 3 payments, 2 payments, or just the single payment for the license? And that software assurance, you are only buying the current year in which you are buying the license. So if you buy a license in year 1, you'll pay 3 years of software assurance. If you buy a license during year 2, you'll pay 2 years of software assurance. If you buy the license during year 3, you'll pay 1 year of software assurance. So I hope this cleared up confusion that you might have with OpenValue. It can be confusing, but if you take the time to kind of sit and think it through, it's really not that bad. I encourage you, if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. If you found this video useful for you, make sure you click like and also click subscribe, so that way you can be aware of when I make new content available. Thanks for your time. I hope it was helpful for you, and I'll see you the next time.